then you went where?
Well, interestingly, if you don't mind, during that time, I did several things. I would say within about 4 years, I had gotten everything that I could get out of the job, I thought. Until one day, I had time on my hands and was looking at a desk next to mine, and there was a transcript sitting there, and I opened it and was poring through it. And gosh, this reporter didn't know anything about punctuation, didn't know anything about grammar, couldn't spell or paragraph to save himself. And then I turned to the back page, it was mine. And I've got to tell you, I was so devastated by that experience that for the next probably 5 years, I picked up every book I could find, attended every seminar that was given on a state and national level. In those days, it was by the gurus, Nat Weiss and Bill Cohen and so forth, and learned, and of course didn't come away with a tenth of the learning they were trying to give in the first set of seminars, so I had to return for more. And finally, after about 5 years, I felt that I was a respectable reporter. And it was at that point, still in this lower, it was called the District Court of Nassau County, Long Island. Then I had heard about something called a speed contest. There were these people who listened to these fast talkers and tried to write them and were graded on it. And I read some notes printed in these magazines put up by these associations that I was paying dues to, and said, golly gee, there's a whole world out there I had no idea about. You have to understand that the psyche of the New York court reporter, and of course this is not to a person, but it's pretty much general, and it hasn't changed in 50 years in my respectful opinion, is we work to make money. Professionalism is real nice, but we have to feed our families. And all well and good, and that is, as they say, the approach of most reporters in the New York metropolitan area.
Kind of old world values.
Well, kind of. My dad had brought me up a little bit differently, although, as I say, he was mostly a physical worker. He also did some semi-professional work. But I felt, let me try to be a professional, and hopefully some money will come along. And that kind of helped my approach. At any rate, I heard about these speed contests. I decided to take my machine into one and sit in, and of course I couldn't believe that I was in a room where people could actually write these things down. I couldn't even reach the keys in time. So I did that, and I did it 2 years later, and then realized that, golly, this is possible. It's within the realm of possibility. So I started practicing. And I guess 2 years after I first started practicing, I passed, and ultimately was fortunate enough to win my state competition. So I was really fortunate. Along the way, I decided to teach reporting. So I opened a school. I'm very fortunate to say that at one point we had as many as, I think, 350 people enrolled. So it was a large-sized school, and it was respected within the community. Most of my graduates have now retired. I don't understand why anybody retires at all. I mean, I'm 50 years, and Bill Cohen tells me that the second 50 is really a piece of cake, so I'm going to see if he's right. I graduated a lot of people. It was a very good school, I'm proud to say, and people went on to be owners of reporting firms and professionals and so forth. So that was some of the things that I did along the way until I achieved going into the Supreme Court, which in the state of New York is the higher court. It's the Superior Court in the state of New York. I walked into the Supreme Court, and I was told that I would be sharing an office with a god, Arnold Cohen. And you must understand, I had known of Arnold Cohen. I had met Arnold Cohen. Arnold Cohen had graded me on test papers and so forth, but I never thought that I would be an equal with Arnold Cohen on any level. And the man was just extraordinary. He taught me an awful lot. Now he started filling in the blanks, and he started bringing me to a different level, a level that many reporters don't have the opportunity of even knowing exists. And Bill had the office next door. So Bill and I would go back and forth about theory text and ways of writing. But Arnold was more laid back, and I learned an awful lot more about how to be the compliant, if you will, reporter from Arnold. So I've been very fortunate to have rubbed shoulders with some of the greats of our profession, including Nat Weiss and so forth.
Over how many years did your employment with the Supreme Court extend?
My total officialship, if you will, that is being a court reporter in the state of New York, went for 20 years. It was in 1983 when I had my first failed retirement. I retired from the state of New York at that time because I found out there was a world of reporting that I didn't truly know existed. I knew that there were people who did deposition work. What I didn't know was that there were people who did depositions that were daily copy, immediate copy, that they had these things called computers that transcribed. Now understand, I was one of the first reporters in the East Coast of the United States to use a computer. I wasn't the first, I was probably among the first, let's say 20 or so. And I was probably doing real time before most reporters, at least in the eastern half of the US, knew that there was such a term. But of course we had a different definition of that then than there is today because of who we were and what the software allowed us to do and so forth. I may have missed the point of your question. I may have gotten sidetracked.
No, I was trying to trace your career, and you said you had a failed retirement, and apparently you went back into some aspect of reporting thereafter.
That's true, and I guess where I really should have gone was the fact that just prior to my 20th year, somebody who knew that I had a computer dictionary, a freelance reporting firm in Manhattan, had a major set of depositions that was going on ultimately for about 18 months, but they were now into maybe the 4th, 5th month of it, and they needed an extra body because they were wearing their few computer reporters down. So they asked if during my 6 weeks of vacation I would consider giving them 1 or 2. Now I had never in my prior years ever worked during my vacation time. But this time I said, let me try it. I knew the people who owned the company. They were very nice. In fact, the wife of one was a student of mine. She ultimately had her own company, and we competed against each other on a friendly basis. But at any rate, so I did do some of this work for them. And it was on, one of the cases was the Penn Central Railroad bankruptcy. It was a monster case going on in DC, as I recall at the time. And it was all immediate copy. And I had never done immediate copy on computer, but the people who were there helped me out an awful lot. And so we got through it, and we did fine. And now, as I say, I came back to my state court job and said, wow, there's a big world out there I never knew existed. The other part of it was that when I came back from doing the Penn Central case, they asked me to do 1 or 2 local depositions. And the other aspect that I learned about, I had never dreamed I would be able to partake of, was the fact that I was in a giant law firm in the city of New York, which occupied some 6 or 8 floors of a high-rise building. And during the break of the deposition, a waitress came with coffee to me in a china and presented it to me during the break. And I said, gosh, the state of New York never treated me this way. So this was, as I say, a true learning experience. And I appreciated it. I went back to my court job, and I thought about it. It was kind of being digested now. And I said, you know what? You've been ruminating about the fact that you really are getting bored at your job. Bored not with the people I worked with and so forth, but again, there was this, I guess there was this drive in me my whole career. I wasn't able to get any more out of, and I don't know how to explain it in better terms than that. I couldn't improve on my job, do any more for people I was writing for than write their words and transcribe them well. I couldn't do any more than deal with the judges and try to be as professional as possible and show them the things about reporting that I knew, be respectful to them, help them out whenever they wanted. But I had done that, and there was nothing more that I could do, I felt. So I decided that once I had 20 years of time that I could vest with the state of New York, meaning entitling me to a later pension, I would then try my hand at freelance. So that was my next venture. So after that first failed retirement, I became a freelance reporter. I worked for the first company that I had done some earlier work for a couple of years, and then decided to open my own firm. It was a small firm. I wanted to keep it a small boutique firm, and that was the beginning of my freelance career.